Let's go shopping, girls. I have all the money to spend. Let's go, girl. Clock it. I don't understand why this regular people sit with us in this cafeteria.
They say money can't buy class. The Hargroves never got that memo. Richard Hargrove didn't walk into rooms. He arrived in them. 52, silver-templed, owner of Hargrove Logistics and RH Properties. 2 companies large enough to have their own zip codes. He had been featured in a business magazine under the headline, The Midas Touch, and had the framed copy hanging in his office where clients could see it before he even opened his mouth. His wife, Cynthia, had made a decision at 28 that she kept for 24 years without blinking. She would not walk. Not because she couldn't, because she didn't have to. She wore designer everything, carried bags with waiting lists, and got her nails done every Thursday like a religious obligation. She was the kind of woman who entered a room and made sure the room felt it. Their staff of 12 knew better than to make eye contact first. Gerald, the head driver, had worked 9 years for this family and had been told once, calmly by Cynthia, that his presence was making the living room feel crowded, while he was fixing a lamp nobody else had bothered to fix. Maria, the housekeeper, was summoned by an actual bell because Cynthia felt that shouting for staff was too common. The staff had a group chat called Survival Mode, where they shared warnings every morning. Meant Cynthia was doing rounds. Everyone knew to disappear. The 3 Hargrove children had grown up breathing the same air of entitlement. It had settled in their lungs like perfume, sweet, strong, and suffocating to everyone around them. Dominic, 19, had just collected his high school diploma like it was an inconvenience. No college plans, no work plans, no plans. And his parents saw absolutely nothing wrong with that. Money dropped into his account every first of the month. He did with it whatever he wanted and nobody asked questions. Richard called it finding himself. Dominic wasn't looking. Jade, 18, Dominic's partner in carelessness, treated her diploma as a ticket to shop harder. Skirts short, Instagram loud, weekends a blur of parties and boutique runs. When her mother once gently suggested thinking about the future, Jade laughed genuinely and said, "Daddy is not going anywhere." Nobody corrected her. And then there was Brianna, 22, junior at Crestmore University. Pre-law, not because she loved law, but because it sounded the most important at family dinners. Brianna moved through campus like it owed her tuition. She had 3 girls, Tasha, Megan, and Lola, who followed her everywhere, laughed at her jokes before she finished telling them, and agreed with every opinion before she was done having it. The campus called them her minions, but never to her face. Brianna called regular students the civilians. I genuinely don't understand why they sit us in the same cafeteria as everyone else, she said once, loudly, in the cafeteria, while a girl on a scholarship 2 tables away stared into her food and said nothing. On the 3rd Saturday of every month, Cynthia hosted her ladies' gathering, brunch with her 3 oldest friends, Adaize, a nurse, Priscilla, who ran a small catering business, Yemi, a teacher saving up to open a daycare. Good women, solid women, women who had built something real with their own 2 hands. Cynthia did not see it that way. "Oh, Priscilla, you're still doing the catering thing?" she said one afternoon, bracelet catching the light like it had been trained to. That's so sweet. I keep saying, a woman your age shouldn't be on her feet all day. But I suppose not everyone has options. Priscilla smiled and said nothing. Adaize once drove over in a car she had just paid off completely. Hers, no loan, fully owned. Cynthia spotted it from the window and said to Jade, just loud enough, God bless her heart.
The three friends kept coming back because underneath the performance, they remembered the girl Cynthia used to be before money rewrote her personality. They kept coming back, hoping she would return. She never seemed to notice they were waiting. The Hargroves were untouchable, loud, golden, certain that the ground beneath them would hold forever. It wouldn't. It started small. That's how rowing always starts. Small, quiet, polite. Okonkwo, Richard's CFO, knocked on his office door on a Tuesday morning in March with a laptop and a look. Richard waved him off. Numbers were Okonkwo's problem. That's what Richard paid him for. But Okonkwo came back Wednesday and Thursday. By Friday, what had looked like a discrepancy had a name. It was a hole. Procurement invoices at Hargrove Logistics had been inflated for nearly a year by a vendor ring buried deep in the payment system. Hundreds of thousands had walked out of the company dressed as legitimate expenses, slowly, quietly, for 11 months. Richard fired 7 people. He made calls. He threatened lawsuits. He sat in his office at 2 a.m. with a glass of whiskey he never drank, staring at numbers that refused to cooperate no matter how long he glared at them. His wife Cynthia was in Milan that week. He didn't call her. By June, RH Properties was bleeding. 3 major tenants exited lease agreements, citing management concerns. A polite phrase, meaning word had gotten out that the Hargrove ship was tilting. 2 development deals collapsed when partner investors quietly withdrew. A bank facility Richard had used as a financial cushion for years was called in. Full repayment immediately, per a clause nobody had read carefully when things were good. He sold his watch collection. Then the second car. He quietly listed one of the properties. He told Cynthia they were restructuring. She went to Paris anyway for 2 weeks. She came back with new luggage. Brianna's allowance hit late for the first time in her life. She called her father 4 times in 1 hour. When he finally picked up and said there was a temporary cash flow situation, she was silent for a long moment. Daddy, that's literally not my problem, she said, and hung up. She took Tasha, Megan, and Lola to dinner that evening on her last active credit card and ordered without looking at the prices. The food came. The conversation was light and loud. Then the bill came. The card declined. On dessert, the table went quiet. Lola reached into her bag without a word and covered it. Quietly. No drama. She just paid. But something shifted in that silence, something small and invisible that settled over the table like a change in weather. Brianna felt it and did not look up from her plate. She never called it what it was. Dominique's monthly deposit didn't come. He checked his account 4 times, like checking it more would change the number. He called his father. Voicemail. He called his mother. She told him his father was handling something and to be patient. He laughed because patience had never been a currency he'd needed before. Jade went shopping anyway, on the last credit card that still worked, and didn't look at prices either because she had never needed to. The card worked. Barely.
She got home, bags in hand, and found her mother sitting in the living room, staring at the wall. "Mom?" Cynthia didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was steady, controlled, performing fine. "Your father's sorting something. It will be fine." It would not be fine. October came like a verdict. Hargrove Logistics entered insolvency proceedings. Auditors arrived with laptops and cardboard boxes and went through every file like the company was a crime scene, because in many ways it was. RH Properties was placed in receivership, accounts frozen, assets assessed, legal fees alone were catastrophic. Richard Hargrove, the Midas touch, the man in the magazine, the man who had never once waited for a table, was broke completely, flatly, without remainder. The mansion on Crestview Hill was repossessed on a Friday morning. Maria was there when the notices went on the door. Gerald was in the driveway when the fleet vehicles were collected by men in ties who did not apologize. Neither Maria nor Gerald said anything. The Hargroves packed what they could. What was left after the creditors, the lawyers, the receivers? They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of the city. All 5 of them. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with no island. Cynthia stood in the center of the small living room, surrounded by cardboard boxes, in yesterday's clothes for the first time in 2 decades. She stood there for a long time, saying nothing, her eyes moving around the walls of a life she did not recognize and could not return to. Outside the window, the city continued like nothing had happened. And somewhere across town, 3 women, a nurse, a caterer, and a teacher, had just seen the news. Priscilla was the first to call. Cynthia's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Priscilla's name on the screen. And Cynthia stared at it for a long time. The woman she had pitied for years. The woman whose food she had called cute. The woman who had smiled and said nothing. Calling to check on her. Cynthia let it ring. And when it stopped, she sat down on the floor of her empty kitchen, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she cried. Nobody threw a party. That would have been too kind, too clean. What happened instead was quieter and cut deeper. It was the looks, the quick glances at the grocery store, then away. The former colleagues of Richard's who ran into him at a petrol station and found something urgent to look at on their phones. The social media posts, vague, Holy Ghost-toned, God humbles the proud energy that didn't name names but tagged enough locations that everyone knew exactly who they were about. Richard saw one. He put his phone on the kitchen table and left it there for the rest of the night. Jade took the bus for the first time in her life and got on the wrong one. Twice! She ended up on the far east side of the city during rush hour, standing in a crowd of strangers, holding a railing, her eyes stinging. A woman across from her, tired, bag on her lap, shoes worn at the heel, noticed her crying and quietly passed her a pack of tissues. No words, just tissues. Jade took them. Couldn't find a thank you that didn't feel broken. The woman got off at the next stop and was gone. Dominic got a job at a grocery store because there was nothing else and the apartment needed a third income. He hated it loudly for the first 2 weeks, complained every evening, came home smelling like the break room, slumped in front of the television like the couch had personally offended him. But slowly, without announcing it, something changed. He started to notice the regulars. An old man who came every Thursday for bread, milk, and 1 orange. Always one. a mother with twin girls who needed help reaching the top shelf every single time and always said thank you twice, like once wasn't enough. He started to see people, actually see them, not through them, not past them, at them. It was a muscle he had never once used. It was sore. Cynthia went to a community center not because she wanted to, but because the apartment walls were closing in and she needed somewhere her family wasn't. They put her in a financial literacy class for women in transition. She sat in the back the first day, arms crossed, fully prepared to be unimpressed. The instructor was sick that second week and they needed someone to fill in. Cynthia, almost without meaning to, stepped up. She stood at the front of the room and explained budgeting in a way the women understood. Because she had lived inside wealth long enough to know exactly how it worked and exactly how fast it could disappear. The women listened, really listened. One of them looked at her the way Cynthia used to look at no one, with genuine attention, like what she was saying mattered. She called Yemi that evening, first time in months. "I think I might be good at something," she said. It came out like a confession. Yemi said, "I always knew that. You just had too much noise around you to hear it."
And Brianna, she went back to Crestmore on the academic scholarship she had always had but never mentioned, because having a scholarship when your father owned companies was embarrassing. She went back alone. Tasha had stopped calling after the credit card dinner. Megan texted once, a soft, non-committal "hope you are okay" that required no response and received none. Lola sent a meme. That was the end of it. Brianna sat in the cafeteria alone for the first time in 3 years and stared at a table that used to seat 4 like it was a mirror. A girl sat across from her, plain backpack, earphones. She opened a container of food and without looking up said, "You want some? You look like you haven't eaten today." Brianna's first instinct was to say something cutting, but she opened her mouth and nothing sharp came out. Just nothing. The old armor wasn't there. She didn't know when she lost it, only that she had, and that the girl across from her was looking at her like she was just a person who needed food. And that was somehow the most disarming thing anyone had ever done. "Thank you," Brianna said. The girl's name was Amara, scholarship student, part-time job, sent money home every month, never made a sound about any of it. She was the most quietly certain person Brianna had ever sat across from. Not performing confidence, just living it. They started talking, then studying, then walking back from the library together at night. One evening, Brianna said it without planning to. "I used to call people like you civilians, like you were less than." Amara looked at her for a moment. "And now? Now I think we were the ones who were missing something," she said, "the whole time." Amara nodded slowly, not forgiving. It wasn't hers to forgive. Just acknowledging, just witnessing. Richard got a job in logistics consultancy. Not at the top, somewhere in the middle, taken on because beneath everything, he actually knew the industry. He wore a regular suit. He took the bus on days the car needed work. He learned the receptionist's name on his first morning and the cleaner's name by the end of the week because they were the first people he saw every day and there was simply no longer any reason to look through them. One afternoon, he passed a petrol station and thought of Gerald. He thought of the 9 years, the parking lots, the bells Cynthia had rung, the way he had accepted the magazine cover and never once thought to share the credit with the people who had shown up every day to make the machine run. Months later, Cynthia drove past Crestview Hill. The mansion had been sold, renovated, repurposed. A boutique hotel now, open to the public, anyone who could book a room. She slowed the car, looked at it through the window for a long moment. Same walls,
same view. Then her phone rang. It was Priscilla. The call she had let ring to voicemail the night everything fell apart. The call she hadn't returned for weeks out of something that felt like shame, but was also something like fear. This time, Cynthia picked up. "I'm sorry," she said, before Priscilla could speak. Just that. 2 words, no decoration, no performance. There was a pause on the line. "I know," said Priscilla. "I've got a pot on the stove. Come eat." Cynthia pulled away from the hill and drove towards something that had been waiting for her the whole time. Something that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with who she was before it. Some people need to lose everything to find out what they actually had. The Hargroves were those people.